Welcome back to the Renewables podcast. This is part 2 of our episode with Steve from NAPIT. We're just getting into the conversation around the PAS document, and we've got loads of other topics to discuss with Steve as well. Strap in. Don't forget to get involved in the comments. And if you haven't already, drop a subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference to where we're trying to take this. As myself and Sam have said from the very start, we want to try and be a central part of the discussion between industry bodies, brands, and also installers and consumers. And this is all in that aim. Let's get straight back to the chat, and we'll see you at the end.
Yeah, I think one thing that when we've had, depending on when this one goes out, we've had a good conversation with Graham Kenyon and the IT about this, and the reality of it is that now that document is out there, even though the regulations, the BS 7671 is guidance, the same as what this PAS document is, but you better have got a reason why you've not followed that, BS 7671 or the PAS document, to stand up in court and go, this is why I didn't follow it. Because again, something we've spoken about, Mark, is that whilst us as electricians think of the regs and these PAS documents as extra ways to get us in prison if we do something wrong, it's actually extra reasons to keep us out of prison by using it to refer back to us to why you've done the best job if something does ultimately go wrong. Like, the PAS document isn't going to stop problems with batteries that cause them to catch fire, or fires reaching the batteries and causing a fire to get worse, but it mitigates the risk of that by making sure there's a fire alarm system in that's of an adequate grade. The location's been thought of a little bit deeper than just putting it in a kid's wardrobe kind of thing, and those risks have all been mitigated. If someone still does die because of a fire that's caused by a battery, or because the fire reached the battery or something like that, you can actually use this documentation to go, well, we followed this PAS document, and we put an adequate fire alarm system in. We installed the battery in a location that was fireproof for the adequate amount of time, this, that, and the other. You can use that to lean back on, and I think that is something to get out there to everybody, is that whilst it's easy to go, blooming thing's going to put me in prison one day, there's definitely something in there that I've missed. Also, if you do stick to it and use it as a good reference, as guidance, as it is, then you can lean on it as well as a crutch to help you, and it might just be that difference between you going to jail or not, or a fine. It might not be as bad as jail, but a serious fine or something like that as well.
See it as a good thing, see it as a positive. It's there to help you, not hinder you. I mean, I've seen there's a guy, I think you guys know him, called from Devon Renewables down my way, because I'm in Devon, called Stephen Humphreys, spelt exactly the same. I've got to meet him and have a picture with him. I've contacted him, and I saw something recently with him where he was looking at, and that document got him thinking. He had almost like an alleyway.
I've seen it.
He had like an alleyway, and he was thinking, where do I go here? And he found a nice little spot just as you walk in, and he was like, what about there? Going to bring it through there. But that was great, because he started thinking, it was a tight gap, but it wasn't restricting anyone's escape. You've got to consider other things, but you've just got to be sensible with it. I mean, no one wants to worry everyone half to death, but you're quite right, Sam, you're still going to get people that are just going to whack them in wherever they want with, some of the installs we see in our assessment team get called out to that are, should say, not NAPIT members, but we get called out to lots of things, to do investigations and stuff, and it's absolutely frightening, some of the stuff you're seeing that is potentially dangerous going on out there. So I think these can only be used for the greater good, really, rather than worrying that you're going to end up in a court of law, and you just sleep at night with your conscience saying, you walk away from that job going, I did a good job there.
It's the damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. We've had that come up on a few episodes now, haven't we? That installers will complain that you're taking too long to change the regs to meet what industry's doing, and then when efforts are made to do something quickly, well, why are you doing that? Or
you didn't tell us.
Or why can't you tell us where we can put this equipment, and then you get told where to put it, and it's why you're telling us we've got to put it there.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really difficult, I think, sometimes to satisfy that, and the difficult work the bodies and parts of industry have to try and keep us happy, but also everything safe. It's not easy.
No,
it's not easy. We feel the pressure as business owners and electricians. It's hard out there at the minute where you've got, I don't know if you're a subcontract electrician and you've got your primary contractor trying to screw you over, or if we're working for a client who's been difficult, or all the rules are changing. It's hard, but then all that pressure comes up onto
Yeah,
you guys
yeah,
as well.
we
It's
feel
still
it as well.
individuals in those organisations is something that I think is really often forgotten. And
I mean, one of our founders, Frank Bertie, the chief technical officer, he was one of the founding members of the organisation, and he's still got that drive for the industry now, and he doesn't leave no stone unturned. I mean, he will literally, he sits on a few of the JPAL committees, and like he will review documents for a whole day to make sure they're right before they go out. I mean, that's the kind of effort that people are putting in to make sure these things. But it does take time. You know, they don't meet all the time, these committees. So, you know, the amendment 3 with the bidirectional and unidirectional devices, to me, again, that's a good thing. But that's not new. I mean, you've been in the solar game, Sam, for a long time, so you probably was aware of this a long time ago.
To be honest,
no excuses.
Yeah.
Right,
Check his installs.
Cut. No, I think again, it's such a wide. When you're in something like renewables that's changing all the time, 1 minute you're investigating a new inverter that's come out that's now not got a transformer in. Wow, this thing's so light, it's not got a transformer in. But then we haven't got that galvanic separation. It's like my buzzword. I've used that like 3 podcasts so far.
It sounds cool though.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But and then you're having to look at all this other stuff. So our position on RCDs has always been do whatever you can to keep them off the RCDs.
Yeah.
Wiring, make sure you're wiring it in a wiring system that doesn't require it. But then you come across an installation that's like a TT earthing system, and you're like,
You need it for full protection.
I'm going to have to address this now. And absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, there will be installations out there that will not comply with the bidirectional RCD thing that we've installed because of just the lack of training on our side and lack of conversation about it, really.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that I ever even considered, and we had a really great chat with the IT about that, and I now understand what it's about, and to protect those devices, and so they don't burn out, and all this other stuff that I just had no real thought about. And I don't think, whilst it's obviously an installer that is signing this off and ultimately takes the rap if anything goes wrong as the designer and the installer and everything else and signed it off, it's so difficult to try and be across all of that whilst running a successful business, dealing with everything else that comes with. And so that's why I think having the technical documents from industries like NAPIT, RET, and all these other places, NIC, whoever you're with, I think, like I mentioned, that is the new found value that I found with these competent person schemes, because beforehand I just thought it's just a tick box, I've got to pay this money, and then come out and say that everything's fine or say it's not fine, and then I get another year free, to do whatever. Whereas now, like I mentioned, it's a lot more about upskilling myself and the team through these CPD days, because there is just so many potholes that you can fall down if you don't keep that training up. And as soon as you think you've got all bases covered, Amendment 3 comes out and you think, I never even thought about that. And one of the questions that we kind of had, and was one of my questions as well, was whether or not I wasn't looking in the right place, or the people that have messaged us about this question. We didn't really see anything about this PASS document announcement from NAPIT. Was that something that was announced and wasn't in an area that I saw, or was it just not announced at all for you guys?
It was announced. It was announced in issue 1 of our Competent Person magazine, which goes out to all members. And that would have been in 2023, around about February time, late February, when issue 1 normally goes out. I wasn't at the organisation at the time, so it's not a get out of jail card. But I haven't actually caught sight of that myself yet.
Right.
But I spoke to Frank, and he said we did inform. Whether that just got missed, like we've said, a lot of stuff gets missed, and we can't be across everything because we're all very busy. But it was announced, and I know the consultation period for that from point of view was June 2023, and again a short one, a bit like this Amendment 3 to July, to comment on it. So I think if I'm going to be completely honest, Sam, I think it was probably not shouted about enough because it was so important that it needed to
Such
be.
a big change, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there should have been other mediums where that was expressed to people. So that needed more out there because it could have, you know what it's like. You may be scrolling through LinkedIn and you go, well, I'm not bothered about that. Oh, that's interesting. So it could have just been one of those that got missed. So there was a DPC for it, which was a short one, again, a month, and we did put something out there. But again, maybe we can always strive to do better to get that information out. Maybe an email shot to all members, oh, look out for this, it's coming. I mean, we've been quite on top of, as of all organisations, on top of Amendment 3 and getting that in, because although it's only brief, and you've just said you spoke to the IT in length about it, that is really important that people have their voice and actually understand why. So if you do some research on the why, and I've seen some stuff on social media, it's a load of, you don't need to worry about that, they don't get damaged. All right, there's certain manufacturers maybe they don't, but we just don't know. Are you prepared to take that risk where you're using a unidirectional device that needs to be bidirectional? And then we get into the issue of how do you code that if you find it again? So literally, I've had an email today off another member or organisation, a great guy. It's a bit, I don't want to say too much because it's all these things are sort of can't be released, if you know what I mean, because when they're in discussion. So I don't want to sound like I'm being secretive. I just want to make your listeners and people watching aware that that's happening straight away. Right, we need to get our heads together because if there's installations out there like you just mentioned, how are we coding them? Do we feel that's a C2 because they know it's potentially dangerous, or can we ignore it because we think, it requires improvement, it's a C3? So we've had something in code breakers for a very, very long time. Sorry, not a long time, but Amendment 2, we had a section in code breakers and it's in there that if those devices are found, they're C2s, so they're unsatisfactory.
Right, okay.
So that's NAPIT stance at the moment. Whether we get together with other bodies and then maybe RAG or something like that, we'll have those discussions internally. But our stance, and it is in there. So, these things are discussed. And again, I don't want to maybe harp on about the same thing, but just maybe we can highlight that a little bit more. But we do say it at the shows as well.
I think it's great that this Amendment 3 has blown up. Everyone's talking about it. I think it's really good. When we started in solar, I went on a learning journey around bidirectional stuff because I had no idea about it. I'd come in it as a fresh, normal electrician who installs stuff that goes in one direction, and that's how it works. And I approached it with the same mentality, if you like, and it was through sharing content on social media that I got to learn about that because we had a Legrand consumer unit. I was like, we can make use of that. There's spare ways in it. We'll pop an RCBO in. And it was one of the comments on that post who said, actually, that's not bidirectional. I'm like, what's that all about? And you go on that learning journey. But that's maybe a lazy approach on my part, not taking in the CPD that's out there from the likes of NAPIT in the magazines that go out. Maybe we've got some accountability at our own level in this, Sam, where we need to do a bit more work.
Absolutely. I think the problem is, and I know I'm definitely guilty of this, obviously you entering this market as a newbie, if you like, in the renewables area, it kind of forces you to do research at this point in the regulations, in the equipment that's out there. For me, where I've been in it since I was an apprentice, we've always done like that. So we've always installed it like that. So that's how I'm going to continue to install it. Whereas actually, regulations have changed. That if I've not invested the time myself, we can talk all day about how NAPIT or MCS or IET or whatever can maybe do better with pushing publications out and videos out and everything else, but the onus is still on installers, and again include myself in that, to make sure that you are available for that information to come to you as well.
That's hard though, Sam. I mean,
it is.
I've sat in your shoes and I don't get arrogant about the position. I mean, like I said, it's a real privilege to do the job I do. But actually, if I think I was that busy fool, I was rubbish at paperwork. I never, taxes and all the rest of it, and family life and all the rest of it. Sometimes you're just that shattered. You're not going to sit and read an article, and I would never beat yourself up about that. And I think it's a joint effort of maybe you can take time to do that. Like, you doing CPD days is absolutely fantastic, and one of the things from my side is like I'm realised now since 2012 I've been in this world from education and now where I am now. So that installer side for me, apart from the odd little job my dad sometimes asks me to do because I think he's going to kill himself, and he says, I'll do that, son. So when I go back to the Midlands, I do things, but I said to the team at NAPIT and my line manager, I said, look, I can't sit there and be writing publications and sitting on committees and doing this kind of stuff if I'm not going to put myself out there. So I literally got in touch with our insurance people and said, look, can you cover me for going out a bit like our assessors do, and literally being on a scaffold or on a roof, just looking at this stuff going, not necessarily getting in someone's way to bother them or doing an assessment to catch people out. But I want to, because I've been away from that world, I don't want to be these crusty old sparks that tells...
Sounds like free labour to me, Sam.
Yeah.
Right, well,
I'd have to get some WD-40 on the tools if that's what you're thinking. But seriously, and I don't say that to big myself up, but I need that for my CPD. So mine is the opposite to yours.
Yeah.
Yours might be that reading, that watching. Mine is seeing those real life problems you're experiencing. So, I mean,
you got yours.
you guys are a bit far, but what I am going to do is, you travel all over, to be fair to you. I want to link up with contractors and see this stuff going in and hopefully learn myself. Because like you say, we're always learning in this trade. This is the beauty of being in electrical and renewables.
If only there was a podcast that spoke about all this stuff.
Oh no, imagine.
So you could listen on the go.
Groundbreaking podcast, yeah.
No, that's good, and it's a massive learning journey for people like myself who've been in it a while, people like you, Matt, that have been in it about 18 months, people that are watching this now thinking I might go into it. Like, you can't just go, right, I've completed my learning now, I know about solar and battery, because whilst that's probably not relevant to any industry, there's always new stuff coming out. Renewables is a different beast. There's a new EV charger come out, there's a new inverter that's come out, there's new regulations that have come out. Like, it just changes so much that you have to continually be learning and set aside some time.
I don't think I've seen an industry in my time as an electrician that's moved as quick as renewables in the last probably 5 years.
Yeah.
Never mind that old feed-in tariff stuff you're familiar with, when we was used to the same old modules, we were used to the same inverters, we had those brands. Now it is just absolutely crazy, and keeping up with that, like we've said, for yourselves as installers, designers, us as our organisation and all the others out there, it is an absolute minefield and very challenging. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't come together as a group and have these conversations, get more installers like yourselves involved in these committee sides of things as well, so that you can feed into what's coming out in the end. Because like I say, if installers are the last to know, we've got something the wrong way around.
Yeah,
we definitely got someone the wrong way around. You should be at the start of that journey saying, well, actually, that doesn't really work. What have you thought about this? And it might not be able to, because people like Graham Kenyon, who are a lot cleverer than me, might turn around and go, well, actually, no, because of this, and that's fine. I'm happy to be proved wrong in a lot of circumstances, and often am. But actually, I think with that conversation and the things like you're doing with the podcast and the stuff I'm seeing on LinkedIn, I almost get the feeling with this new exciting world of renewables, there's almost like a fervour for everyone to get involved, and the good people in the industry are on board with that and want the best for it, rather than trying to drag it down.
Yeah.
Sounded like I was on my soapbox then, didn't I, giving a speech?
No, Mick, you're right, to be fair. There is, coming into the social thing, the renewables area of industry, I thought there'd be a lot of resistance from existing contractors, because someone else is trying to get in on my patch. But it's totally the opposite. There seems to be that kind of wanting to help
networking,
people do better.
Yeah.
I mean, there's yourself, there's Dan, there's Stuart Cater. You guys have been going above and beyond what I would expect.
Yeah, we did try and keep you out of it, Matt.
Yeah, well, Stuart did warn me, but no, I think there is that element there. We're seeing that online and in the real world, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think the issue, one of the reasons why I quite like talking to people about it and why I want to do this podcast and educate people and everything else is that it actually helps us as a company at play on a level playing field. Because if let's say me and you were pricing for the same job, same equipment, but you'd not seen anything to do with this past document, and you were gonna, you were gonna put the battery inside, you were gonna go, straight into consumer unit, this, that, and the other. You weren't looking at any fire alarm system, but then I'd done the opposite, and there's maybe an extra 2 days work, there's all the smoke alarm stuff and all that, then actually, and the customer was focused on price, they would go, oh, renewables are well expensive. We're going to go with Market Panasonic, and the customer's not to know any different. They've chosen an MCS registered company, this, that, and the other. So by doing all this continual training, I think it actually helps everyone try again, you can't be 100%, but try and price on a level playing field so that people have to find value in other things that aren't related to safety or regulations. They have to try and, provide more value to the customer, so the customers can hopefully get a compliant system no matter who they choose, but they might pay a little bit more for that company because of some other perk that isn't to do with safety. Because let's face it, a lot of the times corners are cut and it jeopardises safety because of price, because of, we won't bother putting the isolator in because we save 20 quid an isolator or whatever, or we won't bother doing that, or we'll just clip that along there because we don't want to dig a trench, or all these bits that save money but either affect the safety or the aesthetics of the installation. Whereas if people are educated and are made to do it in a certain way because of things like the PAS document, then it means that when the customer gets 3 quotes, they're all being quoted on a level playing field, and the customer can make an informed decision, hopefully knowing that they're going to get a similar result out of all 3.
Yeah, it's a pushback for you as well, really, with the customer. So that's fine. You've had your proposals, but have you taken account of the smoke detection and the PAS document? You can refer them to that, and then they can make an informed decision. They may not go and read it or do any further research, but it does give some pushback. It's the same with your tenders as well. And Craig Boost has told me to tell you, he sent you a message, by the way, on Instagram, but he said with your tenders and stuff, if you pitch the tender in a way that everybody would to meet what's actually been specified, but then after that add on all the things that should be accounted for as a cost price.
I've spoken to him about this.
That's such a good tip, because you can really set yourself apart saying, well, that's fine, this is what you've asked for, this is what it'll cost, but actually if you want a compliant system, you need to think about this, and it's going to cost this much more. You set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd there. So
the level playing field is such a difficult area, because in one way you don't want to necessarily help your competition, but in another sense you do, because you want to be able to compete on more than just price.
And it helps the industry as a whole as well, doesn't it?
And it helps
I think back to my install days. I mean, I sit here on a renewables podcast, but actually, I never really entered that world apart from a little bit, feed-in tariff days, and then the government realised they were paying too much money to people and chopped it in. And so I dealt, but so I'm part of this world, but from a different point of not being an installer. But I think back to my install days, and I was from a commercial industrial background, and then dropped back into domestic, which is sort of the wrong way around, really, because I was working for my father-in-law doing a lot of housing association work. I mean, and what I saw is when you're working for builders, general builders, and they get those 3 quotes of those tenders, they always just went plump for the one that was cheapest, and they weren't bothered about the fact that I was using, Crabtree or Expel or the brands are available, and I was using the top stuff because the spec was better, and I was losing tenders, and I was on a steep learning curve. Do I drop to the bottom and use some spurious stuff that I know is going to break down and give me problems? Or do I stick to my guns and may not be the cheapest, but I know I'm doing a quality install with the right equipment installed? And yes, I might take a bit longer and all that stuff. But, I got to a stage where I thought, what am I doing? If that guy, so-and-so down the road said he'll do it for £1,000 cheap, I say, fine. You fill your boots. But you can guarantee you'd probably get a phone call a few months later saying, you couldn't come and put that thing right. Yeah. I mean, and I take it as installers, a lot of your jobs are probably new installs that you've won yourselves, but you're probably doing a lot of repairs and maintenance on things you're finding.
That will come up over the next 5 years as things tighten up. People leave the industry if energy prices fall through the floor or whatever. Nothing ever stays at this height forever, and there'll be a lot of installs. It happened during the feed-in tariff, and we're getting phone calls now where there's inverters that have failed, and whilst that's not necessarily down to a poorly installed system,
it's just
you go there and you look and you're like, God, this is lucky it hasn't caught fire in this, up until now. So I think there's definitely going to be a repairs and maintenance market over the next 5 years when when things will be tightened up for newer installs. But I know there was a topic that you were quite interested in talking about, which was about the island mode side of things, just to move us on a little bit from that, and kind of the way that those systems are set up with battery storage. We've seen a lot of battery storage systems coming up now, and we've touched on the IT systems, the isolating transformers, and we've had a conversation, and it was actually at Southern Storage Live when we met.
That's right.
that I'd realised that the battery system that we'd been installing used the IT system, which wasn't recommended, or strongly wasn't recommended, and a neutral earth bond link should be included within that system during island mode, which again was another big learning curve for me. But you've got some other bits that you want to kind of inform some installers about within the equipment.
Yes, so it's been aware of that process of how these things operate. So island mode gets confused a lot of the time. You hear terms like island mode, off-grid, UPS, EPS, and they're not all the same beast really. So I used to back in the day work on some big contracts for banks where they'd have a proper UPS system. The power couldn't go off. In the meantime, if they ever lost grid power, the UPS would hold the fort, so to speak, before the diesel Jenny kicked in, and those are all spiked. So we're just in an electronic version of that, really. But when you're talking about true islanding mode, I think the biggest thing, and our rig will be on display tomorrow for people to have a look, and they are at all the ELEC shows, is that the one thing we spoke about at that Silent Stories Live is like the earth electrode is not a nice to have if it's capable of island mode. It's a must. Okay, so a lot of people don't realise that. They go, oh, you put that in for, like we said earlier, for TT. No, it's got to, because in island mode, where is your fault protection? If we're relying on an IT system, it doesn't comply. So our fault protection is that reference point to earth through an earth electrode. Then we got to put into the mix of the neutral earth bond relay. So at the moment in connected mode, my neutral is bonded to my supplier's earth, but I can't have 2 points of neutral bonded to earth at the same time. Now the reason for that is what will happen. It will send any RCDs downstream, upstream, doolally. Yeah. We've got a potential risk of circulating neutral currents as well in that situation. So that's a no-no. So we've got to have this situation is when I've lost grid power and the island mode isolator has switched that out, so I've completely lost grid power, I'm independent just from my battery or inverter, whatever you want to say, so I'm sitting in my own little island, I've got to have that reference point to earth, and my neutral is now bonded to that earth electrode. And we've had some discussion over different forums and some posts I've seen where there's an argument then we'll say, oh, well, what is wrong then? What if I'm not relying on the incoming earth, because the regs tell me that, and the EICRS regulations tell me you cannot depend on the incoming earth in island mode. It doesn't say disconnect it.
No.
Got to disconnect the line in the neutral, but it doesn't say disconnect the earth. And there's some argument to saying, well, why wouldn't you? Because then you're truly islanding. So there's a debate at the moment, Mark, I know you've been part of, where we're saying, well, in certain installs, you could be true islanding if there's no incoming services, there's nothing underground, there's no risk of any kind of potential coming from anywhere else, then that would be true islanding. You're sat in your own little transformer, really. You are the transformer. So I think that what we try and do at the shows and what I'll try and do in the publications we release is just highlight these things to say, look, check with your inverter manufacturer. One, what is it doing? Has it got the neutral earth bond relay built into it, for one? If it hasn't, can you have a discussion with them to actually get these things sorted? Most of them, some of them will. Some companies have been really good on that and listened. And also, if not, do I retrofit one? So you can also, to comply with UK regs, you can do. Now, it doesn't look great if you fitted an all-in-one and then suddenly there's other boxes all sat there, but you can walk away with that saying, whatever that funky stuff's doing electronically with capacitors, I bypassed that system and it's now doing what I needed to do to comply with. Because the scary thing with that, and I don't say it's particularly scary for installers, is that those aren't nice to haves. Those aren't really, it's guidance. Those are regulations, like the EICRS regulations, which are legal responsibilities to say you must do that as well.
Yeah, so that's a really tricky one, because we had during our conversation at Silent Storage Live, and we literally ran around all the manufacturers to find out which ones did and which ones didn't. And the ones that didn't, one of them was, like I said, one of the manufacturers that we were installing, and we had a job coming up where they'd paid for the islanding mode and backup mode, or whatever you want to call it. And so I was like, I'm gonna give it a go to create my own neutral earth bond relay, really, to link that. The issue was it's getting the right. You can work it on voltage so that the contactor or whatever comes in when it senses voltage has come back, but the inverter may not necessarily come back on straight away. You have a bit of a countdown.
Delay, yeah.
So it has to be built within the equipment because
Yeah.
you need that synchronization with the inverter
Yeah.
kicking back in, because otherwise you have a situation where you've got the grid has come back online. This is the way that I did it. There might be some more clever people out there that do it a different way, but the grid had come back on to the point where I got the voltage reference, which was right inside the battery, so that, you know, no matter what happened, literally the last point within the battery, I got the 230 volt reference. But because there was a delay in the inverter switching back over, there was a period where the neutral earth bond link had dropped back out because it had gone, oh, grid's back.
Yeah.
But the inverter was still thinking about swapping it off, coming off backup mode. So then during that 30-second countdown, it was then back in like an island mode style system.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, this isn't going to work, because there's that, even though if it was on for 2 hours, that would be fine. It's that 30 seconds that it's taken to transition that knackered it up. So it's so important that manufacturers have that built in, because unless there's other funky ways you can do it that I haven't thought of, and there maybe is, you can't get the right synchronization with the inverters.
It's got to be fractions of a second on that neutral from the connected.
Exactly.
And that throws up a whole new issue then of how do you test those things in island mode, which again is another interesting point.
Questions.
Oh, it's like I've seen your questions.
Yeah, it's like you know.
Because what we've done with that is obviously we've got our model forms and our own forms, paper versions, but we've also got fast test, and I've been working with the team that developed the software for that. One for a decent PV certificate, which we have got live and out there, which probably needs honing and improving. We're always looking at these things, but also a battery storage certificate, because if we're doing our normal, electrical installation certificate, EICR, minor works, whatever, that's fine. But we're not in that world anymore. We're in this almost like renewable space and a different, completely type of installation. So how do you test those things in island mode? You know, we type test our rigs that go out to training centres by basically doing some functional testing on them. So we can prove in island mode that it's isolated from the grid, nothing feeding back. It's supplying essential circuits, the freezer, the Wi-Fi, the lights, whatever. But I think we need to almost get to a point where that certificate is expanded to take into account some of the things you're talking about. Have you proved that those things are working within the actual device? Now, that should be type tested, really. And this is the murky world again between the manufacturer and you as installers to say, oh, yeah, it does what it needs to do. But actually, again, going home at night and thinking, does it? So I think what we're trying to do is speak to people like yourselves about the practicalities. How can we improve those forms in fast test, for instance, to include some of these things, as well as your checklist about it hasn't been put in a loft, it hasn't been put in people's sleep, but also some fundamental tests that you can walk away and go, look, if you ever are in that scary situation, I tested it, and it does what it's supposed to say on the tin. And you'll only get that through thorough testing, not just when it's connected, because that will give us our normal ZS readings, that will give us all the things we're used to. But in island mode, those inverters will fluctuate. The inverter is doing some weird and wonderful stuff to track the voltage, and then suddenly, and they don't recommend actually in the code of practice that you take a measurement of ZS.
I've done it when it's all over the place.
It is all over the place, so that the recommendation in the code of practice is to get your ZE value and take your R1 and R2, which we're allowed to do. But it's,
Doesn't feel right, does it?
No.
you feel like you want to.
But different inverter manufacturers will give you all kinds of different results, and then our test equipment set up for that kind of scenario as well. So
for
at the minute, it's just functional testing is what I can see.
Yeah.
Oh, it turns on, it turns off, it does what it's supposed to do.
So with that then, because obviously people have asked about what sort of tests to do in island mode, we're looking more at, obviously if you've got a gateway system, then you've probably already got your kind of dead tests from doing that type of work, or if you've got a system where you've got a certain set of circuits that you've moved and retested into a little backup distribution board, you've probably already got your dead test there. So are you saying really then, for tests on an islanded or potential islanded system, backup system, to make sure you got those dead tests and earth electrode tests to make sure
yeah.
you've got that.
And I wouldn't necessarily include them, because what we don't want to repeat the information that we've already put. So our our supply circuit to whatever system it is normally would on a new installation is going to fit on an EIC. That's fine, but we don't want to repeat that information again in something we're doing just on sort of the island mode side of it, if that makes sense. Otherwise we're going to have an electrical installation certificate that's got another box that fits, is a renewable, and then this. So we need a really good certificate that includes those. I don't, more than functional tests for me, really, actual readings of I've got this and does it comply, and maybe that particular manufacturer, they can give you that data as well to say it should do this, and when you tested it, it did. So I think that's an expanding world we haven't even thought about, really. Well, I think about it, and I'm sure you guys do. But I think a lot of installers will go, I'll just do the standard stuff, and I'm not even going to fill in a certificate. They probably don't know they even exist for PV, and because it's so different. We don't test like the DC side, for instance, of a PV system. Is a PV array test report. You speak to some contractors that are in the renewables world, they don't even know what that is.
A lot of them don't have the test sets, because I've had those questions come back about why do you even test your solar stuff, and the island side of things. We approach it where we do the RCD trip time test just to see if your RCD still functions in island mode. I've done the ZS test just because I'm nosy and like to mess about with stuff, but I think it's one of those where you can only go so far with it, and proving that your protective devices work feels like
I think so.
The right way.
Because actually, I mean, another thing I get all the time is that one we come back to time and time again is that earth electrode and the neutral earth bond relay, and being in island mode. Where is your fault protection if you haven't got it? That come back to fundamentals of, like, even in part 3 of BS 7671, that is still an electrical installation at the end of the day. And it's all right sitting off grid, just supplying a few essential circuits for a few hours if that's what you need it to do, if you're working from home or whatever. But the potential of a fault's still there. Where is your fault protection in that situation? And a lot of people go, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I thought the inverter was working the magic. No.
Sounds like you've been talking to me there, Steve. It's one of those where you really don't know what you don't know, do you? If you've not really thought about that level. It's a tricky one. But yeah, the electrodes are a must.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Or your conjure disc, whatever you want to use.
Other
options are available. I've not actually tried those yet, but they do.
But that's our passion, really, and especially mine from a personal level is, being in this industry for a long time and learning new things and being excited about it still, in my 50s, is like we just got to stress this, get it out there, have conversations, and you've already highlighted, and the fact that you do this is that we've got to keep having these conversations, and we'll get people that will come and, oh no, that's a load of rubbish, that won't work, and cleverer people will tell me I'm wrong and you're wrong, and that's absolutely fine, but let's have the conversation anyway, because what we don't want is that, and you mentioned it earlier, Sam, we don't want to race to the bottom. We want people to think, actually, we're always going to get our cowboy installers that are in it for a quick buck, and you two run successful businesses that are there to make money, provide for your family and the rest of it.
But that, Matthew?
Yeah,
I run the business.
But actually, we've got to make sure that we are voicing these things openly to people, and I won't stop doing it. Like you said, we did it at Northern Ireland last year, and it was news to some people. I spoke to you at Solar and Storage, and you were honest enough to come up to me and say, there's a few installs I need to go back to, and I nothing of my admiration for you when you said that.
We ended up raising it with the manufacturer of that product, and it took a while, but they ended up saying that they would then changing their next version of the same unit. It looked identical, but just had different sort of serial number on it. Started with a 500 instead of a 200, whatever the reason that was. And they actually said, let us know any jobs that you've got that have backup enabled, and we will change that under warranty. And so that's how we did it. The warranty payments never cover actually the labour that goes into it,
no.
But at least we didn't have to, pay for the new inverter or something like that. So at least we got that. But no, it's really interesting. We can obviously see how passionate you are about those levels. But anyone that watching this that is interested in going into electrics or going into renewables and everything, what would you say would be a reason to choose NAPIT over any of the other kind of scheme providers.
We're causing a bit of grief here, mate. You know,
I've not named anyone, so
no,
that's up to you if you name
I
any.
can't comment on honestly on it and any of the sort of scheme providers, and they're great. Like I said earlier, they're great people that work there, and they've all got their good points and bad points, and we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I would say the major thing for us is the direction of travel we're on at the moment is we're an organisation that's like trying to take care of business from a point of view of let's get out there, let's be front facing. You know, if any of your listeners or watchers are up this way and go to Harrogate, you'll have at least 5, if not 6 technical people on that stand tomorrow. So we're not trying to, we sell you stuff if you want to buy it, that's fine. But like I said, we're a commercial company, but the technical support that is unparalleled in my opinion. And the technical knowledge within our organisation is absolutely ridiculous. So, you know, I think the biggest thing for anyone that's thinking of coming to that renewables world is do your homework. Make sure you get some regulated qualification under your belt. And that's going to get harder, by the way, just as an aside, because with the EIS requirements now, what that's going to do, if we get back to a little bit of sort of the ground roots of that, is this sort of electrician plus model where, you know, we can't have, no disrespect to bus drivers, by the way, but if you're a bus driver one day and you're fitting solar panels the next because you've been on a 5-day wonder course, that's gone now, thankfully. So, you know, we want qualified electricians that do those reg quals, get that under their belt, maybe go out with some installers and learn the ropes first before jumping on a roof to do solar or battery installs, or just listening to the manufacturer or watching a CPD video. So I think training and, you know, it doesn't have to be with us. You know, hopefully it is with us because we've got some great training, you know, and like I say, the trainers are just as passionate as I am. But get some training, understand these regulations, understand those, get the publications, learn, listen to podcasts, listen to webinars as extra learning, and then hopefully join NAPIT, and we'll guide you through that process as much as we can. But there to help, really, not like you say, not necessarily to hinder. And it's like I say, sometimes seems like we're the bad guys, but generally I've been here now. You know, what are we in? Probably, you know, coming up to 8-9 months, and it's all I've seen is people just wanting to do the best for its members, which goes unseen. You know, it's not our wages aren't our fault, and all the stuff I see on social media, everything's our fault. And you know, what are they doing? You know, you've got to bear in mind we are there for our members ultimately, and we are involved in wider industry. But you know, our members come first, like with a lot of you know, associations like ours and schemes. Our members do come first, but we are interested in feeding the wider industry as well.
I think your passion for it all has come over endlessly in this podcast, Steve.
Annoyingly.
No, but I want to thank you for coming over. You've come over to talk about us. It's a privilege, really, to have you here from NAPIT, as it was with the IET in the other week's episode. And yeah, we're really lucky to be able to have these conversations. So I just want to say a personal thank you for coming on and joining us. If there's anything else that you want to add, so I think we've covered loads of ground there.
There's a bit like other podcasts we could go on for. We could double the time, couldn't we?
We'll do a part 2, Sam, like you did on mine.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just loads, isn't there? And again, like Mark said, just a huge thank you for giving up your time. Again, I know you're really busy and getting ready for EICRS at Harrogate and what have you. So yeah, thank you very much for giving us that time. And hopefully people watching and listening to this have taken some value, as I know me and Mark definitely will have. But yeah, I suppose the only thing to say would be to reach out to NAPIT about any of that. We're not paid by them or anything, but we are both members of NAPIT, so we can kind of vouch for that firsthand. I've gone through a massive journey of looking at that deeper value, like we've mentioned, of the training, the CPD, the bulletins, the magazine, all these different bits. And I know you've got some good stuff coming out as well.
Hopefully look out for that. Yeah. And obviously I want to thank you guys as well for the input you give, because I think sometimes that gets missed, because you know the stuff since I've got to know you guys and other installers has been invaluable for me as well, because like I say, I don't sit in that space. So I want to thank you guys as well for what you feed back in, because we need to keep doing that as well. Yeah. So it's like a pat on the back for everyone.
Yeah, that's it. We're all doing so well. We're all doing so well. No, that's great. Well, yeah, thanks very much for that one. But anyone watching this or listening to this, please like and subscribe, and yeah, just leave any comments or questions that you've got, things that you think we've missed, things that you thought were good, things you thought were bad. Hopefully there's not too many of the latter ones, but we're doing our best to try and be that voice for for everybody involved. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Have you got anything else?
No, I'm good with that one.
No, cool. Thanks very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.